Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 2, Hiranyakashipu, King of Demons, and it is text 49. Atanyama nityamba
Atanityam nityam va.
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate katum
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Svabhava sochatam iti
Svabhava suchatam iti. Læs lidt langsommere.
Atanyama nityamba
Atanityam nityam va
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate katum
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Svabhava sochatam iti
Svabhava suchatam iti.
Please change.
Atanityam anityam va
Atanityam nityam va.
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate kartum
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Svabhava sochatam iti
Svabhava suchatam iti.
Atanityam anityam va
Atanityam nityam va.
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha Nanyata sakyate kartum. Svabhava suchatam iti.
Atanityam nityam va Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate katum
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Svabhava sochatam iti
Svabhava suchatam iti. Atanityam nityam va.
Atanityam nityam va
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Nanyata sakyate kartum
Svabhava suchatam iti.
Svabhava suchatam iti Atanityam nityam va
Atanityam nityam va.
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate kartum
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Svabhava sochatam iti
Svabhava suchatam iti.
Atanityam anityam va
Atanityam nityam va.
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Neha shochanti tadvidam
Nanyata sakyate kartum
Nanyata sakyate kartum.
Svabhava sochatam iti
Svabhava suchatam iti.
Atam. Therefore, Nityam,
Nityam
the eternal spirit soul,
Eternal spirit soul
Anityam,
Anityam
the temporary material body,
the temporary material body
Va, or,
or
Na,
Not
Not
Iha,
Iha.
in this world,
in
this
this
world
Shochanti,
Shochanti
they lament for,
They
they
lament
lament
for.
for
Tadvida,
Tadvida.
those who are advanced in knowledge
Those who are advanced in knowledge
of the body and soul.
of the
the
body and soul.
soul
Na,
Na,
not,
na,
Anyata,
Anyata.
otherwise,
Otherwise,
Sakyate,
Sakyate
is able,
is able.
Kartum,
Kartum.
to do,
to do
Svabhava,
Svabhava.
the nature,
The nature.
Shochatam,
Shochatam.
of those prone to lamentation,
Those
of
prone
those
to
who
lamentation.
iti,
Iti.
thus.
Thus.
Translation. Translation by Srila Prabhupada.
Though
Those who have full knowledge of self-realization, who know very well that the spirit soul is eternal, whereas the body is perishable, and are not overwhelmed by lamentation. But persons who lack knowledge of self-realization certainly lament. Therefore, it is difficult to educate a person in illusion. Purport. According to the Mimamsha philosophers, everything is eternal, nitya, and according to the Sankhya philosophers, everything is mithya, or anitya, impermanent. Nonetheless, without real knowledge of Atma, the soul, such philosophers must be bewildered and must continue to lament as Shudras. Srila Shukadeva Goswami therefore said to Parikshit Maharaj, Shurota Vyadini Rajendara Nirinam Santi Shahasharasha Apasyatam Madman Tattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Those who are materially engrossed, being blind to knowledge of the ultimate truth, have many subjects for hearing in human society, O Emperor. Bhagavatam 2.1.2. For ordinary persons engaged in material activities, there are many subject matters to understand, because such persons do not understand self-realization. One must therefore be educated in self-realization, so that under any circumstances in life, he will remain steady in his vows. Om Jnanati Garandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sharitatam Yamanopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakatamayam Tatati Svapatantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Parisabhanu Sudevi Pranami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Rupyascha Kripasindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the verse again. Atanityam nityam va neha shochanti tadvida nanyata sakyate katum svabhava shochatam iti. Those who have full knowledge of self-realization, who know very well that the spirit soul is eternal, whereas the body is perishable, are not overwhelmed by lamentation. But persons who lack knowledge of self-realization certainly lament. Therefore, it is difficult to educate a person in illusion. So, this verse talks about a person in full knowledge of self-realization. And it also talks about persons who lack knowledge of self-realization and how they are different. So, the person who have full knowledge of self-realization, it is known that he is not overwhelmed by lamentation, because he knows that the material body is perishable and that the spirit soul is eternal. So the cause of lamentation is for a lot of people that the body seems to perish over time, and what we used to enjoy, we cannot enjoy so much anymore. So that is a cause for lamentation. But one who knows he is not the body, he does not derive his happiness from the externals, but derives his happiness from his internal relationship to Krishna and Guru. So Srila Prabhupada is quite a proper example of a person who is full of spiritual knowledge of self-realization, and also that he doesn't lament so much. We see that practically that Srila Prabhupada, he was quite senior when he came to the West, and he suffered so many bodily troubles, but that was not a cause of lamentation for him. His only cause of lamentation was how to get these Westerners to accept the message of Vasudeva, because they are engaged in so many foolish activities. And as it is stated in this verse, but persons who lack knowledge of self-realization certainly lament. Therefore, it is difficult to educate a person in illusion. So he basically came to the West in order to give this message of the Bhagavatam. and you just encounter a vast ocean of ignorance, because people, they are so caught up in the material energy. So, and that is stated by Chanakya Pandit. He mentions that the characteristics of a fool is that when you give him knowledge, you give him some good advice, he will be very offended. Take it as a great offense, because who is anyone to educate me about anything? Because I know it all anyway. So immediately the false ego comes up, and therefore it is very difficult to teach anyone anything, especially in this Kali Yuga, because most people, they unfortunately they fall into the category of being foolish people who lack knowledge of self-realization. So, but we can see practically that the person in knowledge of self-realization doesn't lament, and since no one likes lamentation, we should also strive to come to that Brahma Bhuta stage where there's no lamentation and no hankerings to fulfill our material desires, but where the only desire is how to please Krishna. And by that contact of the soul with Krishna, then we become very, very blissful. Also, another characteristic of a person who is in full knowledge of self-realization is that he quite naturally, because that person has something very valuable, a great treasure, and that person knows that other people, they could also benefit so much from this treasure. So therefore, the self-realized person quite naturally wants to distribute his good fortune to others as well. So we see that also quite practically in the example of Srila Prabhupada, who was so almost desperate to get the message of Krishna out to the masses of the people, and change the world in this most troublesome age. So in that connection, I found quite a nice verse. It's one of my favorite verses. And also Srila Prabhupada, he talks about in the purport that there are so many different philosophers, but they are mostly also bewildered because they don't know. Some say everything is eternal, some say everything is permanent, but they don't really have any practical experiences. And they're mostly on the platform of the mind. So these philosophers, they tend to change. Like you see in general society, you see that some idea is quite general, like a philosophical concept for a decade or so, and then it changes and it tends to go back and forth like a pendulum. So that is the Sankalpa Vikalpa, the flickering mind. But anyway, this verse here very, very nicely talks about Srila Prabhupada said intense desire to challenge these bogus philosophies and to establish the real philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So he said, we can challenge any nonsense philosophy. Socrates, Plato, Kant, Darwin, all of them. So many mental speculators and word jugglers who have misled so many people. Now it is your task to find them out and expose them, so that people may appreciate the real philosophy. We must now become very serious to save the people of the world from this very dangerous situation. Become very convinced yourself of our philosophy, and then your preaching will act. And try to sell as many books as possible at all the schools and colleges. This is scholarly information, flawless science. Kindly assist me in this great work, and know it for certain that by your sincerely working in this way, you shall very soon go back home, back to Godhead. So we can see the mood of Srila Prabhupada, that he doesn't really care who he's up against. He says basically they're all bogus, and we can challenge them and we can defeat them. The science of Krishna consciousness is completely flawless. And if one actually gets into the science of Krishna consciousness, then it will be very hard to be impressed by these other philosophers, because you just learn to see right through them. Like if one actually becomes convinced and knows the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, then well, you might not be able to like defeat anyone, because we know that, for example, there are different like levels of devotees. There are Kanista Adhikaris, there's Madhyama Adhikari and Uttama Adhikari. Whereas Kanista Adhikari, he doesn't really know the philosophy so much, but is like he has some basic faith that Krishna consciousness, it's a nice thing and maybe it will do something good for him. So such a person, if one hears like Mayavad philosophy or hears someone who has some good idea or some like political agenda, then might think, oh hey, this is also very nice, and then become diverted in that way. But Madhyama Adhikari, his conviction is stronger. There's a stronger faith, and he'll also be able to preach and can distinguish between the the innocent people in general. The innocent people, those we can preach to. The demons, we should not preach too much to them. Just like try to avoid them, keep a distance, and offer respects to the Vaishnavas. And Uttama Adhikari, like Srila Prabhupada, is very expert in defeating anyone at any time. Place and circumstance, doesn't matter. But it's very interesting how Srila Prabhupada, he says in this letter, become very convinced yourself of our philosophy and then your preaching will act. So this conviction is on different levels. There's of course the theoretical conviction that we see, hey, there's this and this philosophical argument and that is very nice and this can defeat that. And so it's theoretical information. But if the knowledge actually becomes realized, say if one is a pure devotee and is like completely detached to matter and knows within experiencing a very, very high level of happiness from within the core of his heart, then what chance is there that someone who says, no, actually this is not true, the matter is real and spirit that is false, or something like that. If you are actually situated in knowledge who you are and who is Krishna, what chance is there that we can become deviated? So in that way, we should try to be very rigid in our practice of devotional service and sadhana bhakti, and have a strong conviction, both with theoretical knowledge, but we should also be practically situated in devotional service, so we can derive the realization. Like Krishna, he says, Tishamsatata yuktanam vaidetam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. That those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And then he continues to say that to show them special mercy, I, with the torchlight of knowledge, how is this?
Destroy the ignorance with the torchlight of knowledge.
And so Krishna, from within the heart, he destroys the ignorance with the torchlight of knowledge. So wherever there is light, there can be no darkness. So Krishna, he enlightens us with knowledge. Then what chances there that we can become influenced by ignorance? So in that way, we can try to please Srila Prabhupada by following his mood and trying to share this knowledge of self-realization with the masses at large. Srila Prabhupada, he talks a little about these. He just mentions briefly in the purport the Vimamsha philosophers, the Sankhya philosophers, but we know that there are so many philosophies, or there's basically the 6 branches of Vedic philosophies, but in the modern age, in this Kali Yuga, we have so many little small branches and twigs on the great tree of speculation. So it is also stated very nice in Mahabharata. How is this? Tako pratista shrutayo vipina nasabrishe yasha matana binam tamashatabam nihitam kuhayam mahajam yena katasapanta. That I just need to get the right translation. Dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path, by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajanas advocate. So, this fact that the solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. That is the same Srila Prabhupada he refers to in this letter, that we should become very convinced about the philosophy. We should actually realize the philosophy, because then we will be able to convince others. And in that way our preaching will act. And by that we can derive the ultimate benefit of ultimately going back home, back to Krishna, where life is so much fun. Everything is complete in the spiritual world. But actually there's one thing in the material world that we do not find in the spiritual world. And so while we're here, we might just as well take advantage of that. The thing we have here in the material world, which is not there in the spiritual world, is the pleasure of giving knowledge to the ignorant masses, because there's not really any ignorant masses in the spiritual world. So that's like a special facility in the material world. It's a special enjoyment that is only here. So in that way we can be like little honeybees, very, very busy to get the nectar from doing so many things. We can like try to arrange school programs, or we can distribute books, or we can distribute prasadam, or we can like talk to our friends and neighbors and like try to get them at least just a little bit interested. Whatever we can do here and there, just greet people nicely, and then say, oh, these Hare Krishna people, they are so nice. So that way, like we can derive a special nectar in this material world, like just like the Paramahamsa, just like the swan-like devotee, who is the swan has this special beak by which it can extract milk from a pot, or like if you have water and milk mixed together, then the swan can extract that milk, because it likes the milk, and water is so ordinary. So, but milk, they're special. So in the same way, then the happiness in the spiritual world can also be found here in the material world, and even we can find a higher happiness here in the material world by liberating conditioned souls. And if we do it on a platform which is like not on the false ego, like, hey, I did it, I sold this guy a book, I am amazing, then we will not derive any spiritual bliss so much. Then it's just like the happiness of the mind, that thinking, patting yourself on the back and saying, yeah, I'm so good, and now they will all salute me and like that.